Hello everyone, my name is Simone Woodward. I would like to welcome you to the DLT and Red Hat Technology Spotlight series. Today we're featuring OpenJDK. This Spotlight series will be hosted by Red Hat's Phil Osip, the public sector focused Principal Specialist Solution Architect at Red Hat. Before we get started, just a few quick notes. This is a live training and is being recorded, which will be posted on the marketplace as an on-demand training after the fact. That being said, I would just like to ask everyone to mute cell phones and keep background noise to a minimum if possible. And that is it. So thanks so much, and I will turn it over to Phil to kick off today's Tech Spotlight.
Thank you. So I'm Phil Osip. I am a solution architect at Red Hat, and the focus for today is looking at migrating to OpenJDK. But before we jump into OpenJDK itself, I want to give a quick overview agenda of what we're going to discuss. So start off with what's the problem? Why do we even need to have this discussion? What can we do? How can you do it? Close out with a so what's. What are our takeaways? What's the important thing to take away? Look at some next steps if there's potential for that, if there's appetite for that, and then open up for brief Q&A. So why change? Well, right now, Java is everywhere. Still #1 programming language, still #1 for developers of choice, and there's a whole bunch of it around. However, the Oracle JDK is no longer free for any commercial use. And this shouldn't be any new news. This is as of 2 years ago. This is as of January 2019. Customers must now pay a license for the Oracle JDK. So those that are using the Oracle JDK need to make a decision. There's a huge impact on that overall, those billions of Java implementations and millions of users because of the amount in the ecosystem that's leveraging Oracle JDK today. So why is that important? Well, there's a cost associated with it, a fiscal cost currently. And that cost effectively goes up by user level subscription, but also by core and processor level subscription. So now you're paying Oracle for that use of the Oracle JDK. How big of a deal is this? Your number of servers, your number of cores, your processing core factor is going to generate what that required license is. And you can quickly get to $1 million level transactions for maintaining a server base or a core count to accommodate existing programs of record and existing capabilities. And that's even assuming sort of a low processor level count and a low core count by contemporary CPUs. So some of the numbers on this are based on an 8-core CPU, and we're routinely seeing 20, in excess of 20 core CPUs, especially as things go to the cloud. It's run on all these devices, and there was never an expectation before for paying for the JVM use. So one option is to maintain status quo, pay Oracle for that Oracle JDK. Another option is to try and jump in and at a given periodicity, migrate to the OpenJDK community builds that are out there and maintain backward compatibility and CVE and security fixes on your own. Another one is self-support, but it's honestly not really an option. I put it in here more in tongue-in-cheek than as a realistic option because it truly is arguably more complex to maintain and build a JVM than even an OS. So it's more effective to look at an alternative. Is there a better way? What can we do? Let's first look at how interchangeable. So we've got an OpenJDK that's out there that's community released, and we've got this Oracle JDK. What's the deltas? What am I looking at? What are my pain points in order to be able to address and utilize the OpenJDK in much the same way that you might be leveraging the Oracle JDK currently? In general, they're very interchangeable. There are some proprietary features from an advanced console perspective, but even a lot of the management level features and the inspection level features have really been contributed back in and maintained in OpenJDK since that January 2019 announcement. So things like the Java Flight Recorder and Java Mission Control are actually part of OpenJDK now. New UX, UI, UX experiences and leveraging things like Java FX are also part of the OpenJDK. There are going to be proprietary, so JNI calls, Java Native Interface. When you're expanding beyond the horizon of Java and having your Java application talk to other languages in runtime, that may require some refactoring based on how you connected. So what that Java Native Interface, those JNI calls looked like, and whether those are still maintained and available within the OpenJDK purview. For most cases, and this is greater than the Pareto principle, so it's not an 80-20, it's probably more like a 98-99 to 2-1. Migration to the OpenJDK is just a drop-in replacement. But there's ways to be able to create some sureness and identify what those deltas might be and identify the risk so that can be mitigated up front. Red Hat's had a long history with the OpenJDK, so we didn't jump on the notification bandwagon in the January 2019 timeframe and say, oh my, let's create our own JDK instance and let's try and make that available. Red Hat's product and portfolio have simultaneously supported the OpenJDK and Oracle JDK on RHEL and in our Windows Server implementations for our application services since the Java 5 times. We've been a leading member of the OpenJDK board, outside of Oracle, largest contributor. So again, feeding back into that open source community. And we've been constantly spending on our dime, on Red Hat's dime, for the certification process for OpenJDK and Oracle JDK for years. Now, back shortly after the announcement, back in April of 2019, Red Hat announced that their stewardship, our stewardship of the OpenJDK projects, both for OpenJDK 8 and 11. And as we transitioned, we also took over sort of the legacy leveraging of OpenJDK 6 and OpenJDK 7, because JDK 7 still had some wind in its sails in the April 2019 timeframe until it became end of life. So Red Hat's build of the OpenJDK is really looking at a productized, an enterprise scale supportable version of the OpenJDK, a way to be able to consume it without taking on the burden yourself for the security certifications and the continuous update cycle for it. So the OpenJDK upstream open source project feeds in to our productization process, just like we do for many other aspects of the Red Hat portfolio. We include product security engineering. We include QE, certification, documentation, cloud enablement, number next concerns for the JDK. Things like support for cloud native Java development with Quarkus and Quarkus's tie-ins to OpenJDK. Keeping things secure as default with OpenJDK on RHEL 8, actually supporting and maintaining FIPS enforcement without any out-of-the-box updates or modifications. So secure by default rather than secure by separate effort to modernize, update, and manage a new configuration. And then we build out that OpenJDK productized version. We maintain full lifecycle and maintenance for it, including tracking, fixes, security floors, advisories, and we maintain it for a long maintenance duration so that you're not kept in a perpetual 6-month hop. If I take a look historically at what that looks like for what we Red Hat have been involved in at a RHEL level, at a Red Hat Enterprise Linux level for OpenJDK, we took JDK 6 through to fruition, maintaining it across 3 of our RHEL baselines, from RHEL 5 when it was originally added in to RHEL 6 and RHEL 7. We did the same for JDK 7, until it effectively went end of life in June of 2020. And that's why you don't see it. That's why you see an NA for RHEL 8. So RHEL 8's release happens after JDK 7's already gone end of life. So the two long-term releases, the OpenJDK 8 and OpenJDK 11, are maintained for not just a 1 year, 2 year cycle, but for a lengthy cycle out until May 2026 for OpenJDK 8 and out to October of 2024 for OpenJDK 11. And those are supported in JDK 8 on RHEL 6, which is in ELS mode, RHEL 7, and RHEL 8. So the most contemporary operating systems offered by Red Hat. We do the same thing for the latest release of OpenJDK 11 on RHEL 7 and RHEL 8. So on the contemporary baselines that so much of the cloud infrastructure and individual data centers are built upon today. But we don't stop just at looking at OpenJDK support in RHEL itself, in Linux. So in the Windows ecosystem, we also support OpenJDK 8 and OpenJDK 11 on prior release, Windows Server 2012, current release, Windows Server 2016 and 2019, and also client side, Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 10 support added with those same timelines for end of support for the versioning. So all the way out to 2026 for the JDK 8 and all the way out to October of 2024 for the JDK 11. What that means is that you've got a consistent way to be able to get a supported, scalable utilization of OpenJDK entitlements from Red Hat, regardless of whether you're running on RHEL or running on Windows servers. It's included, so there's no additional cost whatsoever baked into RHEL, baked into any aspect of Red Hat's application services, our middleware portfolio. There are separate subscriptions for Red Hat's build of OpenJDK for Windows servers when those Windows servers aren't being used for either development purposes or aren't leveraging and deploying any of the Red Hat application services. There's also a separate subscription for client workstations, again, for production capabilities. It's important to note the caveat at the bottom of the slide that for development use with the subscription, single user development environments are free. They're not counted. There's no additional subscription against it. But from an entitlements perspective, if you're currently leveraging RHEL, OpenJDK comes with RHEL gratis. If you're leveraging any aspects of Red Hat's application services portfolio, OpenJDK becomes as part of that as well. And if you're doing things for development purposes at a single developer, single user development level, that's also part of the package. So why use a Red Hat build for OpenJDK? This is really addressing sort of our open source leadership, our ability to catalyze and work with the upstream community, the value of our subscriptions, the support capabilities, and also the cost savings that such an approach involves and addresses for you as a consumer of the JDK from Red Hat. So there's first and foremost security, getting the latest bug and vulnerability fixes, making sure that what you have is trusted. Operational and maintenance savings, not turning your individual organization into a software shop where you're managing and maintaining your own JDK in order to be able to still leverage that huge investment in talent, in techniques, and in technology bundled around that larger and broader multi-billion device Java ecosystem. There's no proprietary licenses. There's Red Hat software maintenance, and that's available for all of our customers. So the developer and customer portal allows multiple people to be able to make any bug, so more eyes on a problem makes all bugs shallow. By being able to leverage and utilize Red Hat's OpenJDK offering, any deltas or deficiencies that may be addressed from a security or a performance perspective in the JDK don't need to be self-discovered, self-managed, self-maintained, and administered, but you can grab benefit from anybody in that larger Java ecosystem. Once somebody's banged their head against the wall, the problem gets solved, and that solution is made available for all. That's really a strong advantage of the Red Hat subscription model. We have long-term support and stability. Again, we're not talking about you have to iterate at a 6-month cycle. We're looking at again, maintenance of JDK 8 out to 2026, JDK 11 out to 2024. There's minimum downtime, there's faster resolution times when there are those latest CVEs and vulnerabilities, almost at a 0-day periodicity to be able to address and maintain and manage that trusted, secure provisioning in runtime and development environments. It's cost effective and it's included in any utilization of the Red Hat portfolio, whether that's enterprise Linux, whether that's our OpenShift container platform as a service, or whether that's in any of the Red Hat application services in the portfolio. Think enterprise application platform, so our application server, our Jakarta EE compliant application server, Red Hat Data Grid, Red Hat Fuse, all of those things, our process automation suite with Decision Manager or BPMN-based process manager. Any utilization currently of the Red Hat portfolio includes use of this trusted, supported, long-term, and stable JDK release. It also provides peace of mind. You've got effectively a one throat to choke from the OS utilization and doing Java development to the containerized environment where you're going to deploy the applications and everything that's in between. So how do we actually get there? We've identified a potential problem and a price point inflection with Oracle. We've identified a solution with leveraging and adopting Red Hat's OpenJDK to be able to mitigate that problem. So how do we get from A to B? How do we go from I've got an Oracle JDK instantiation and I want to move to OpenJDK? We've got a recommended approach, a multi-staged approach, and this really depends on how complex the environment is. So we create an inventory of applications and JVMs. Peter Drucker has a famous quote: "You cannot improve what you don't measure." So you first got to know what you have in order to be able to know what you would need to be able to change. Second part is to analyze the applications, and I'm going to go into this more in some follow-on slides as we look at Red Hat's migration toolkit for applications and exactly how it makes it easy to inspect that, whether there's source code present or not. Prepare operational handling. So you want to be able to manage the shift from Oracle JDK to OpenJDK. What does it look like to deploy OpenJDK? What does it look like to be able to manage that? How do you work that in to your existing environment? Run a pilot with a set of applications. Give yourself an internal proof point before you be able basically rinse and repeat, which is what the fifth one is. It's migrating at scale and iterations. So you're seeing what you've currently got, what your ground truth looks like. You're analyzing that so that you know if you've got any high risk items or any places where there is a delta, where it's not a drop-in replacement. You're preparing how you're going to do the provisioning for the utilization once you've identified and analyzed that. You've given yourself a proof point, so you've built internal trust that yes, this works, yes, this is simplified, and this is a rinse and repeatable pattern that can be used, whether, again, that's on top of bare metal, in virtualization, in the public cloud, in the private cloud, in a disconnected environment, and then migrating out in iterations. So assessing your application is something that leverages Red Hat's migration toolkit for applications. You can attempt to do these same things internally based on whatever other tooling that you have, but sort of out of the box, again, open source, freely available from our developer portal is the migration toolkit for applications. It lets you to do analysis that is customizable and extensible. And the advantages of that is this is a tool that will scratch this itch an Oracle to OpenJDK migration, but it scratches a whole bunch of other itches as well, some that we've thought of and some that we've just left open for extensibility. We can do things with source code inspection, but source code isn't required in order for the migration toolkit to generate results. There's minimal time needed to be able to do it. It will make out recommendations, and actually the screenshot here probably isn't something that you would normally run into unless you are really looking at not just a migration from Oracle JDK to OpenJDK, but a migration from a really deprecated version of the Oracle JDK to a contemporary version of the OpenJDK. It's looking at things that have changed and become deprecated back in the Java 2D space and in the Java AWT, the fonts space. So there are certain cases where certain fonts weren't effectively open source, so could not be used, or Java AWT colors were leveraged and were in later versions, so in Java 5, 6, 7, and 8, were replaced by a different approach to colors in Swing applications, in user interface applications using Java or in Java FX. And this is just reporting on what that would look like from an inspection perspective. Yeah, no deltas would show all green, and you'd be ready to migrate. There's easy access to be able to view the application dependencies. So basically unpacking, in the case of a Java EE or a Jakarta EE application server, an EAR file or a WAR file into those subordinate jar files and inspecting those as well. And there's a really good access to cloud and container readiness as well. What's the fit if I want to be able to go cloud native with this? How can I turn this into a container image that has the appropriate Java version to be able to deploy this application code? So again, migration toolkit for applications from Red Hat is broader than basically the two things in the upper left on the red. So proprietary Java EE runtimes or a Java EE or JDK upgrade. There's a lot of other aspects to the migration toolkit for applications as well. I'm not going to focus on those today, but I do want to let you know that in leveraging this tool to be able to address a risk assessment or a likelihood for drop-in replacement from Oracle to OpenJDK, there's a lot of other things that it can do for you organizationally as well. It supports a web-based console for being able to kick off the management of project level, so multiple applications in an application suite or independent application inspection. That web console does type analysis and sort of level of effort estimation when you're doing certain tasks. And again, I'm giving examples here that expand beyond the horizon of a Oracle JDK to OpenJDK, but just to let you know what's part of that toolkit. It does, like we talked about before, a great job of being able to determine and manage those application dependencies, being able to see the pieces and parts, and then being able to drill down to those for fidelity to see if there may be one offending deprecated jar file and a broader EAR file that would be a sticking point for an Oracle to OpenJDK migration, as an example. It also provides introspection. So when you do have source code, it can leverage that and it can look at both configuration information as well as the source code itself and generate manageable reports that show deltas and show remediation steps as well. And there's a whole series of IDE plugins. So whether you are native on local workstation with something like a Eclipse IDE, whether you are cloud-based for everything, doing something like code-ready workspaces, whether you're using smart editors as IDEs like VS Code. This is baked in. Migration Toolkit for Applications has the ability to interact and integrate, giving you hints and code change recommendations exactly from where you work today. So what are the key takeaways then for utilization of Red Hat's OpenJDK? What's the so what? smart, predictable, and methodical migration. So not having to be able to become your own software company, manage that risk yourself, maintain the back portability of SVEs and security. A significant cost savings, no Oracle license fees, no fees at all when you're already inside of a RHEL or Red Hat portfolio ecosystem, whether that's on RHEL or on Windows servers. Minimal security risks, because we're again part of that integration and interaction with that upstream community, and we are feeding back any of the changes that we're addressing with our security teams, with our QE, back into OpenJDK, so that their periodicity of updates every 6 months get the goodness of the work that we're doing in maintaining that long-term release for Red Hat's OpenJDK. On-par performance with on-par monitoring, so you're not missing any widgets or tools or capabilities that may have been prior time available only in Oracle JDK. And that's really been a place where Red Hat has focused, and the open source community has focused in creating that parity since that January 2019 announcement. So between then and now, over that 2-year period, those management pieces, the management console, the newer UI UX experience with JavaFX, all folded in, maintained, and managed inside of OpenJDK. There's multiple versions. You're not restricted to an OS. You're not restricted to a particular version either. So at any time with a Red Hat subscription, you could be doing number next development and integration testing on JDK 11 while you're still in production deployed on JDK 8. Leveraging the larger ecosystem and the fact that we're already included, if you're running Red Hat Kit, whether that's RHEL, whether that's OpenShift, whether that's any of our application services or middleware, it's already included out of the box. In the RHEL 7 instances, it was a peer deployment with Oracle JDK. In RHEL 8, it is exclusively an OpenJDK deployment. There's no extra work to do. It's just there and available as an application stream. So what are the next steps? You've seen that there's a potential problem. You've seen a solution. We've looked at how to get and leverage that solution. What can you do to further this? There's a bunch of resources, and the deck and presentation will be made available to be able to sort of unpack how do I get there? What are the things that I can be looking at on my own? How can I make this real for my organization? But there's also ways that Red Hat can help. You can partner with Red Hat, you can partner with us and schedule basically a migration discovery session. Or you can even address, as we go through that list of 5, from creating an inventory all the way to iterative migration at scale with our Red Hat professional services or our partners to support the easy transition and again, the most of the time drop-in replacement of OpenJDK from Red Hat for Oracle JDK. And with that, before I hit a thank you slide, with a couple minutes left, I can open it up for any available Q&A.
Yeah, if you have any questions and you'd like to type them in the chat, please go ahead. Or if you want to unmute and speak up and ask Phil a question, that is fine as well. If you need to type it in the chat, we'll make sure that we ask that question for you.
And I'm just going to forward to the thank you here so I can hit the stop sharing and I'll be able to read anything then that's in the chat. I just can't see that and do this at the same time because I'm a lousy multitasker.
So Phil, the question is, for a customer to set up a discovery session, who would they reach out to specifically? And I think that the answer is their Red Hat account executive.
Yes. That's the easiest and quickest way to get involved. Or again, if you want to look at a self-inspection with the Migration Toolkit for Applications, the resources slide identifies some links that will let you have access to that as well. But yeah, any sort of discovery session or desire to be able to sort of unpack those 5 steps with professional services and our consulting arm, it's best to start with your current Red Hat AE.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay, we are coming up on the half-hour time frame now. I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. I don't want to blow off any additional questions. If there are any, folks want to unmute or want to pop something in the chat, I'm happy to answer those to the best of my ability.
Hey, Phil, thank you to Red Hat and to Phil for this phenomenal OpenJDK overview. For all of our customers, whether you are with the Department of Navy, the Department of Labor, with FAA, with SSA, whatever agency you may be with, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to your Red Hat account executive directly or to your DLT sales account, and we'll make sure that we connect you with Phil and his team so that we can get and dig a little deeper into OpenJDK and your questions. Thanks, everybody. Have a great one and look forward to the next invite for the next Red Hat DLT Technology Spotlight.